Welcome back to Technological Frontiers, one breakthrough at a time. We're diving deep today
Deep dive. Love it.
into an article called Exploring the Science of Human-Computer Interaction in Head-Mounted Display, HMD, Devices.
Catchy title.
It is, right,
Yeah.
and it's by him and Jewel.
Oh, yeah. He meant Jewel. I've read some of his stuff before. He's a great technologist, loves to cover the latest, advancements in technology.
He does. And we highly recommend checking out this full article. Of course, we'll have a link for you in the show notes.
Of course, yeah.
But, this is a deep dive, so we're really going to, break down the most fascinating parts, especially for you, the listener. So are you ready to jump into the world of HMDs?
I am. Let's explore.
Okay, so before we get into, the nitty-gritty of HMDs, I think it'd be fun to take a quick trip down memory lane. Remember those old computer interfaces? Like way back in the day, like even before touchscreens were a thing?
You mean like the command line interface?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those were the days you practically had to be like a programmer just to open a file.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating is that those clunky command lines were actually the very first generation of human-computer interaction, HCI.
Right.
It's like the primordial soup from which all of our modern interfaces, evolved.
It's true, and it's really incredible to think about how far we've come from those days, right? Like
Yeah.
the invention of the mouse, it was a complete game changer, and then touchscreens, they brought us even closer to a more natural way of interacting with computers.
Yeah, they did. But, even touchscreens now feel almost, I don't know, basic compared to the potential of virtual and augmented reality. VR and AR, as most people call them. VR and AR represent, like, a whole new generation of HCI, one that promises to, like, completely blur the lines between the physical and digital worlds.
Totally, and HMDs are, they're at the forefront of this entire revolution.
Yeah, they are. Okay, so let's talk HMDs then. I think most people probably picture, I don't know, like futuristic gaming headsets when they think of HMDs, but their history actually goes way back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Much further than most people think, I bet.
Right.
The earliest forms of HMDs can be traced all the way back to like the mid-20th century.
Really?
Yeah, they were mainly used for like military and aviation,
Wow.
long before anyone even dreamed of using them for like entertainment or everyday tasks.
That makes sense when you think about it, though, right?
Yeah.
Like pilots, they need that immersive view.
Yeah.
And then in the military, I'm sure those early HMDs were used for, like, simulations and training.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. But what's really fascinating is how, those early bulky contraptions evolved into the sleek and sophisticated HMDs that we see today.
They're so much more comfortable now.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? HCI design principles played, like, a crucial role in that evolution.
They really did. Yeah.
It's not just about making them look cool,
Yeah.
right?
No, not at all.
HCI is about making sure these devices are actually comfortable to wear and easy to use.
Exactly. Like take, for example, the MetaQuest or the Microsoft HoloLens. They've got, those lightweight designs, adjustable straps, and the placement of the interface is like all carefully considered to ensure that it just feels natural and intuitive for the user.
And, I think one of the biggest things, too, is those spatial awareness features. They're a total game changer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Being able to see your surroundings in AR or having that virtual chaperone pop up if you get too close to, a real-world object in VR, that's a huge safety feature. All this really goes to show how HCI is about making these devices feel like extensions of ourselves, not just like clunky gadgets strapped to our heads.
100%, yeah. It's about creating seamless and intuitive experiences. But I think it's also important to remember the technology that's powering these experiences too, right? Like to create those really stunning visuals, those lifelike simulations, you need serious processing power.
That's where GPUs come in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Those graphics processing units, those are like the workhorses of HMDs.
100%. Rendering those complex visuals in real time, especially in VR, is incredibly demanding. And without those powerful GPUs, those virtual environments would be they would be laggy, they'd be jerky, and they would totally break the illusion of reality.
Yeah.
It's the GPUs that allow for those, smooth, responsive, and truly immersive experiences.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it's not just the processing power either, right?
No.
HMDs are packed with all sorts of sensors and cameras that act like the eyes and ears of the device. I read somewhere that there are accelerometers, gyroscopes, magnetometers, even depth sensors.
Oh, yeah. All of those sensors are constantly collecting data about, the user's movements and the surrounding environment. It's what allows the virtual world to respond instantly to your head movements, your hand gestures, even your location in the room.
That just blows my mind every time I think about it. Like, you turn your head, and the virtual world turns with you, and it's all thanks to, like, all those sensors working together.
It really is remarkable. But this is also where HCI design faces a unique challenge,
What's that?
How do you incorporate all of these components, all of these sensors and cameras without overwhelming the user?
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balancing act.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. You want all that amazing tech, but you also don't want to feel like you're wearing a science experiment on your face.
Right. Yeah, it is. It really is a challenge for the designers. They want the technology to kind of like disappear so the
Yeah.
user can really just, focus on the experience itself. That's the magic of good HCI.
Totally, yeah. Okay, so we've got all these sensors and, powerful GPUs bringing these virtual worlds to life. But how much of that world can you actually see at once? That's what I always think about.
You're talking about field of view, or as it's more commonly known, FOV.
FOV, got it.
Yeah, think of it kind of like looking through a window.
Oh,
The
yeah.
wider the window, the more you can see. And in HMDs, a wider FOV means a more immersive experience because you're not like limited by that narrow view.
Right, yeah. It's like that feeling of being truly inside the virtual world, not just like peeking in from the edges.
Exactly, yeah. But I'm sure you can guess there's more to it than just like cranking up the FOV as wide as possible.
I'm sure there is. There always is with these things.
Right. There are trade-offs. A wider FOV requires, more processing power, which can impact performance and can sometimes even compromise resolution. Plus, if you push the FOV too wide, especially in augmented reality, it can actually lead to discomfort for the user.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not just about how much you can see. It's also about, how comfortable it is to see it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how does FOV actually differ between AR and VR? I'm guessing they have different optimal ranges.
Yeah, you're right. They do. In augmented reality, where you're kind of overlaying those virtual elements onto the real world, a typical FOV ranges from like 30 to 50 degrees.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And going too much wider can create it can create kind of a disconnect between what you're seeing and your, natural field of vision, which can lead to that discomfort.
Right, right, yeah. So VR must have much wider FOVs then.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Since you're fully immersed in that virtual world, I imagine you want to see as much as possible.
Totally. In VR, you'll typically find FOVs that range from like 90 to 110 degrees, sometimes even wider. And the goal there is to like mimic human peripheral vision as closely as possible to really create that sense of truly being there.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got the visual immersion down, but what about actually moving around in these virtual worlds? That's got to be like a key part of feeling truly present, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's where degrees of freedom, or DELF, come into play.
Degrees of freedom, all right.
Yeah, so imagine this. You're wearing an HMD, and you want to look around.
Okay.
That's 3DOF. That's rotational tracking. You can turn your head left and right, up and down. You're basically like a swivel chair, but with a much better view.
I like that analogy.
So 3DOF is like looking around, but what about actually moving your body through that virtual world?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's where 6DOF comes in. It adds positional tracking to the mix.
Yeah.
So now you're not just looking around, you're leaning, you're ducking, you're walking, you're even jumping within that virtual environment. It's the difference between, being a swivel chair and having full freedom of movement.
Wow, so 6OF takes the immersion to a whole new level.
For sure.
Yeah.
But, designing those tracking systems so that they, align with natural human movements, that can be incredibly complex.
Yeah, I bet.
And that's really where the HCI design shines.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that, those movements feel intuitive. So you don't even have to think about how to interact. You just do. It should feel just as natural as moving in the real world.
Right, yeah. Okay, so we've got sight and movement covered.
Yeah.
But we humans have more than just two senses, right?
Right.
What about touch or sound or even smell?
Yeah.
Can HMDs tap into those senses too?
They can. HMD technology is already, it's incorporating elements that go beyond just, the visual immersion. We've talked about haptic feedback before, which allows you to feel virtual objects.
Right.
Imagine, reaching out and touching a virtual wall and actually feeling its texture.
Mm-hmm.
Or picking up a virtual object and sensing its weight and its resistance.
Whoa. That's incredible. Like, you're bringing the virtual world into your hands, literally.
Exactly. But is that actually possible with the HMDs we have today,
Yep.
or is that more of a future thing?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Haptic technology is, it's advancing so rapidly.
That's awesome.
You've got these gloves that provide tactile sensations, vests that let you feel impacts and vibrations, even full body suits that can simulate everything from like wind to temperature changes.
Whoa. Full body suits. That sounds intense.
It is, and I bet that would make horror games even more terrifying.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine
Hmm.
feeling those virtual spiders crawling on you? I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't think I'd be brave enough to try that. But you bring up a good point. Haptic feedback adds like a whole other layer of emotional engagement.
Yeah, you're not just seeing the experience, you're feeling it.
Exactly.
And feeling it makes it all the more real. But what about sound? I mean, good sound design can be like incredibly immersive even without an HMD. So how does that translate to virtual environments?
Well, that's where spatial audio comes in. It's like surround sound on steroids. It uses, specialized algorithms to create a 3D soundscape that mimics how we hear in the real world.
Oh, okay. So it's more than just left and right channels. Like, you could actually hear a sound coming from behind you or above you, just like you would in reality.
Exactly. Think about it. If you hear, a bird chirping in VR and that sound is coming from above you and to your left, you instinctively look up and to your left, just as you would in the real world. It adds this level of, subconscious realism that's incredibly
So
powerful.
it's like tricking your brain into thinking those virtual sounds are actually real.
Exactly. It's amazing, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about, sight, touch, sound. Is smell next?
Smell. Hmm.
Will we be smelling like virtual bread baking soon?
Uh-huh. That's a great question. Smell is definitely, it's the next frontier in immersive technology.
It seems like it would be the hardest one to replicate, though, right?
Yeah, it is a challenge for sure. But there are already companies out there working on, devices that can actually release specific scents, in sync with what you're seeing and experiencing in VR.
Oh, wow.
So it's coming.
That is wild. Imagine, like, walking through a virtual forest and actually smelling the pine needles. Or, like, visiting a virtual bakery and getting a whiff of fresh baked bread. Talk about sensory overload.
Right. It's going to be amazing.
It is. It is. Okay, so for now, let's bring it back to HMDs and those, core HCI principles that we keep talking about. Why are these principles so important, especially as this technology continues to evolve?
That's a great question. Well, I think as HMDs become more sophisticated, more immersive, and potentially even more integrated into our daily lives, it's absolutely crucial that they remain, user-friendly and accessible.
Absolutely. We don't want to end up in a world where, like, only tech wizards can figure out how to use this stuff.
Exactly. HCI design is all about making sure that these devices are intuitive, they're comfortable, and ultimately they're beneficial to all users. We don't want technology to become a barrier. We want it to be an enabler.
I love that. So, I mean, it's not all sunshine and roses, though. There have to be some challenges and concerns as these HMDs become more powerful and, more prevalent in our lives.
Oh, of course. Every new technology comes with its own set of challenges. Privacy is a big one.
Yeah, sure.
With all those cameras and sensors constantly collecting data about, our movements, our surroundings, even our eye movements in some cases, it's crucial that user privacy is protected.
It really is. And that's something I worry about a lot with these devices. It's like, where does all that data go? Who has access to it? How is it being used? These are all questions we need answers to before, we all start strapping these things to our faces 2047.
Yeah, 100%. We need clear guidelines and regulations in place to prevent the misuse of this data. Transparency and user control are absolutely essential.
They are.
And then there's the issue of accessibility, too. We need to make sure that HMDs are designed for everyone, including people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's a great point. It would be a real shame if this amazing technology ended up excluding the very people who could benefit from it the most.
Exactly.
So, we need to consider factors like visual impairments, hearing loss, mobility limitations. All of those things need to be addressed right from the start.
Yeah, totally. Inclusive design is crucial. And then, there's the cost factor as well.
Yeah.
Right now, high-end HMDs can be pretty expensive,
Yeah, they are.
which unfortunately puts them out of reach for, for a lot of people. But hopefully, as the technology matures, we'll start to see more affordable options, become available, which will make these experiences accessible to a wider audience.
I hope so too. This technology has the potential to be so transformative. It would be really amazing if everyone could, have access to it. But there's one more aspect of this that I think we haven't really touched on yet. The social implications,
Sure.
How will these immersive technologies impact our interactions with each other?
That's a great point. Will these technologies bring us closer together, allow us to connect in, new and more meaningful ways, even across vast distances? Or will they further isolate us, creating a world where people are more engrossed in their virtual experiences than real world interactions?
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
The potential is definitely there for both, amazing connection and potential isolation.
Hmm.
And it really all comes down to, I think, to how we choose to use these tools and how they're ultimately integrated into society.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's up to us to shape the future of this technology
Yeah.
and to make sure that it enhances our lives rather than detracting from them.
Well said. Well, I think it's clear that, HMDs and immersive technology are still in the early stages.
Yeah.
But the potential, I mean, it really is undeniable. And it's fascinating to see how, those core HCI principles, user-centered design, accessibility, and ethical considerations, those are all shaping the trajectory of this field.
They really are, yeah. It's an exciting time to be following all this as we continue to explore the frontiers of human-computer interaction. I think it's essential that we keep those principles, right at the forefront. It's not just about creating these, cool gadgets. It's about creating technology that serves humanity and enhances our lives in meaningful ways.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And, Himanshu Yal's article, Exploring the Science of Human-Computer Interaction in Head-Mounted Display HMD Devices, it's just a fantastic starting point for anyone who wants to, dive deeper into all of these concepts. And as always, we'll have a link to the full article in our show notes.
Yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. And we always love to hear from you, our listeners. What aspects of your life would you like to see enhanced or even transformed by HMD technology? What are your hopes? What are your concerns about the future of all this immersive tech? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into the, fascinating world of HMDs and human-computer interaction. We'll see you next time on Technological Frontiers.